Welcome back everybody, Danny here, time for another video. We are back in Forza Motorsport 7 today, and more specifically we're going to be looking at my force feedback settings. But before I get going, I want to mention a few things. Number one is I know a lot of you are going to click on this video just looking for my slider scale values. If that is the case, that's fine. I will list them down in the description below so you can just go check them out, steal those values, and go to your game. However, I want to mention that this is going to be a very in-depth video touching on many things that affect your overall experience with your wheel, and I recommend watching this whole video because there's some other things I touch on. Number two, I want to mention the fact that force feedback for any game is very subjective to the person using the wheel themselves. So what I may consider a really good force feedback setting or setup in general may not be exactly what you think is the best possible scenario when it comes to force feedback. You may prefer a different style force feedback feeling than I do, so just remember it's very subjective. I do feel like this is a very good starting point for anyone, but just remember that when you are pulling in my settings, because there is a possibility that you may get into the game, put my settings in there, and you may not like them, and that's perfectly fine. We just may have a different opinion on what good force feedback is. And the third thing I want to mention is dealing with Forza Motorsport 7. You have to have a different mindset when it comes to force feedback for this title. If you are expecting the force feedback to feel like Assetto Corsa, Race Room, Automobilista, iRacing, if you're expecting to get that kind of force feedback out of this game, you're just not going to get that. There's just a different kind of fidelity on Forza Motorsports than there is on a sim racing title like that. If that's your expectations, you will be adjusting force feedback settings for the next 2 years, and you will still at that point not have got them what you think should be correct if you're expecting it to be like Assetto Corsa or something like that. So please keep that in mind. I do have these dialed in to a point that I think is usable, and it does make the game fun to race it with a wheel. However, it's not going to be on the same level as Assetto Corsa or iRacing, so please keep that in mind. I don't want to see that in the comments. I know one of the main reasons why I haven't made this video yet is because I'm making a video saying that these are good force feedback settings for a wheel, but I know there are going to be a lot of people in the comments saying, oh, it still is not that great, and that's not due to your wheel or due to the settings, it's due to the game itself. But let's get into it, because I think that this, at least for me, in my opinion, really makes the game fun to drive with a wheel. So what I want to pull up really quick is a comment that I received from a viewer. And so this was from R3D3L, and he says, as a recent buyer of Forza Motorsport 7 and a TX wheel owner, I'd really like to see your force feedback settings. Force feedback seems to be an issue for a lot of people. Excuse me. And it seems like you have it dialed in. Maybe place them in the comments or in a video description. You don't have to do a full video about them. Other than that, I really enjoy your content. I'm a newer sim racer myself, so maybe someday I'll see you on the track. So first of all, thank you very much for your comment. Thank you very much for being a viewer. And I always appreciate everybody watching my videos. That's the reason why I make them. So thank you so much for your interest in my channel and my videos. Secondly, I did consider putting my force feedback settings down in the video you commented on, but I decided not to do that because I thought that it would better value a lot more people if I actually made a video for people to come and watch. So I was going to take that suggestion, but I decided it would be better off making it in a video. Thanks for that suggestion, though. I appreciate that. And then also, as far as racing with me, sure. I mean, I'm willing to race with anybody. I would love to race with my subscribers. If you guys think that is something you would like to do, let me know, and I can certainly set up some kind of race in whatever game you guys prefer. Or if you have some kind of event that you're going to be interested in doing and you'd like me to take part in, just let me know. You can comment in one of the videos below, or you can send me an email, or whatever you want to do. I would be glad to race with you guys. So let's get right into the settings here. I'm going to take this down, but thank you very much, R3D3L. Just wanted to give you a shout out there. I appreciate you watching the videos. So let's turn the comment off, and now where we are actually over in the Thrustmaster control panel. This is where you're going to want to start, and this is a good point, or a good segue for me to mention that this particular video is specific for Thrustmaster wheels, the TX wheel, T300, and more than likely the T500 as well. These three wheels, I know this is probably going to work very well on. Now, if you have a Fanatec or a direct drive wheel, this may not work as well, but I still think it will be a good starting point for you to start from, and then you may need to adjust some settings as you go from there. But this should still be a good starting point for any wheel. So the TX wheel, though, has a kind of an issue with having a lot of clipping when there's a lot of forces coming through, or a lot of strength of forces coming through. Forza Motorsport 7 sends a lot of information. Believe it or not, it's sending a lot of information to the wheel, and it's a very heavy feeling game when it comes to force feedback. So in your control panel, you're going to want to back the overall forces down to about 75%. This is not only a good idea for Forza Motorsports, but it's a good idea for every game. I actually keep this on 75% all the time because I think it helps with the overall clipping problem. Pretty much everything else in the Thrustmaster control panel is on the default settings, except for the damper, which I've turned down to 0. And then I can't remember if it was a default setting or not. I imagine it was, but I do let the individual games auto center my wheel. So let's get out of here, and we'll actually head on into the game, and I'll go through the actual settings for you guys of what I actually use in-game. So before we head into the options and look at the actual sliders for the force feedback, I want to take you somewhere else first, and I really recommend that you do this as well. Now, I am a diehard sim racer, always have been, and I've always been a really big advocate for not using assists when it comes to playing games like Assetto Corsa, iRacing, and things like that. But you have to remember that Forza Motorsport 7 is not a simulation. It is a simcade, and there's the underpinnings of a simulation, but it's not a perfect sim. So you have to keep that in mind when you're deciding what assist you're going to use, because at the end of the day, this needs to just be a game that you enjoy playing, because you're not going to get a simulation experience out of it, but you can enjoy it. So we're going to hop into the single player really quick. Maybe. Yep, we're going to hop into single player. We're going to go to free play because I want to show you what assists I'm running, because I am running some. Don't give me a hard time about it. I'm telling you, let me explain why I'm running these assists. So go to setup. Let's go to assist. Typically, I would run absolutely no assist on any simulation racing title. That's just truth. Always do. But for Forza Motorsport 7, I do have some assists turned on. The first one that you'll notice is that I'm using normal steering. So simulation steering, in my opinion, in Forza Motorsport 7 with a wheel is broken. And I think it's broken not by accident, but almost intentionally. And why I say and use the word broken is because they've taken a normal steering feeling and they've purposely made it harder than what it actually would be to try to make it realistic. But what they've done, because they just don't have that simulation physics experience, is they've accidentally making the simulation steering too hard to keep control of the car. There's too much snap oversteer. It's too hard to keep the car in the center of the lane. Once you get turned around, it's just really an issue. And I think part of the main reason why people think that they can't get their wheel force feedback set up is a lot to do with running the simulation steering. Just take my word for it. Try it out. If you're running the simulation steering, back it back to the normal steering. To me, the normal steering feels much more realistic compared to driving real cars than using the simulation steering. So try that out. The other thing that you'll notice is that I am running stability control on. It's the same story here. When you turn the stability control off, at least 90% of the cars that I have driven don't drive realistically. They're all over the place. It's just not realistic. So I turn stability control on. I find with the stability control on, only in Forza Motorsport 7, I want to emphasize that, but in Forza Motorsport 7 with the stability control on, I find that the cars just handle and perform much more realistic. So this is the first thing you want to do. Come over here, turn the steering back to normal, because I know you've turned it to simulation steering because you want so badly for this game to be a simulation, but guess what? It is not. So turn it back to normal steering and turn the stability control on, and I guarantee you with just those two settings, you're going to see a huge improvement of the amount of fun that you can have using a wheel in Forza Motorsport 7. Now we're going to back out of here. I'm going to take you over to the nitty-gritty, what you guys want to see. I'm going to show you what I have for my sliders in the options menu. I'm going to head over into controllers, input options, and F for advanced. So here we go, guys. This is it. You can see what I've got. The first and foremost, the thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go through and you're going to want to adjust all these steering dead zones. Okay? Steering dead zones are for a gamepad. They're for a handheld gamepad to help assist you in playing the game with a gamepad. You absolutely do not need them for a wheel. So you want to back out all of the inside dead zones to 0, and you want to back all of the outside dead zones to 100. I think the default setting is 5 at the bottom and 95 at the top. But all of these right here, you're going to make them 0 and 100. That's the first thing you need to do in this menu. That's very important. Handbrake Deadzone, I make that 0. Doesn't really matter for me. I don't have a handbrake. Same thing here with the handbrake. Axis dead zones. If you have a handbrake because you drift or something like that, you may want to adjust this. I don't. The most important thing that you need to adjust for the sliders, for the actual force feedback, is this vibration scale. This vibration scale works with the TX wheel. It works with a racing wheel, but it's designed for the gamepad. And the gamepad has those two little weights that spin in a circle in the Xbox controller. I'm sure you're familiar with it. And it gives you this vibration or a sense of what is happening when you're playing the game using the controller. The problem is that little thing, those two little weights, don't exert that much force. So they max this slider out to 100% so that when you're using the handheld controller, you really feel it well. When you send 100% force through the racing wheel for this vibration scale, it just absolutely goes nuts. It's way too much forces. It sounds like it's going to break the wheel. I mean, it's just too crazy, and it just doesn't need to be set that high. So as you can see, I have really moved this vibration scale down a lot. I've got it down to about 25%, and I think that's a pretty good mix between being able to feel things like when you hit a curb or when you get a tire off the road or somebody bumps into the back of you. You can still feel that, but it's not so powerful that it's absurd and just obnoxious, because at 100% it's just obnoxious. The other thing that it's doing when it's up that high is every time it happens, it's immediately putting your wheel into a form of clipping. And I mentioned this earlier, when your wheel is clipping, you're not going to be getting the information you need to get out of it. So back the vibration scale down to 25%. Also, the force feedback scale I still think is too high. Even though I had it bumped down in the control panel, I still think in-game it's too high as well. It's 100% at default. I have backed it down to 70. Just in general, the force feedback has a lot of weight to it in Forza Motorsport 7. That's just the way the force feedback is in this game. It's a very weighted feeling. And at 100%, it's just way too heavy. It just doesn't feel realistic. I find when you back it down to 70%, it's much better. Still not the most realistic, like I mentioned before, but at 70%, it's a lot better. Now, steering sensitivity, you want to keep that 100%. You want the wheel to react as soon as you turn it, not after. That's what that is. Steering linearity, you want to keep that at 50%. I don't know why anybody would change that, but steering linearity basically is whether or not you have a one-to-one input when you turn your wheel. But you do want, when you turn your steering wheel to 90 degrees, you want the in-game wheel to be 90 degrees and nothing else. That's one-to-one, and to keep it to one-to-one, you want to keep this value at 50, which is the default value. This is a very important one. This one right here, I think, really affects whether or not people enjoy using a wheel in Forza Motorsports. This force feedback understeer. This is not just in Forza Motorsports, it's in a lot of games, and it's terrible in all of them, but it's emphasized a lot. It's really, really harsh in Forza Motorsport 7. Basically, when your car starts understeering, the wheel goes limp and you lose all feeling in it. That is not realistic. That's not the way that it works in the real world, and it just doesn't need to be in at all. I think they need to remove the understeer feeling from all titles, not just Forza Motorsport 7. As I have said before, I'm not a big fan of fake information being sent to you just for the simple fact of them trying to make the game more realistic, because it's not. It's making it less realistic. So as you can see, I've got that turned down as low as it will go. If I could turn it down to 0, I would, but 5 is as low as you can go. So just bump that all the way down. Just remove that. You need, as far as understeer goes, understeer and oversteer, you need to be using your eyes. In a simulation, that's what you need to be using to know if you're understeering. Your eyeballs. What is the car doing? You need to teach yourself to do that. That way you don't need something like an understeer effect in the wheel to let you know. It shouldn't be that way. So, all right, so the force feedback minimum force, I've actually kept this at the default. I found that the default actually works the best at 100%. I have tried it lower and I have tried it higher, but to be honest with you, the default value at 100% works the best for the force feedback minimum force. It gives you what little feeling there is in the road feel and stuff like that. There's not much. I mean, I'll be honest with you, there's just not that much available in the programming for the force feedback in Forza Motorsport 7 for you to feel a lot of the road. It's just not there. I know that's disappointing to a lot of people, but leaving this at the standard default value will get the most out of what they offer in that department. And then the wheel damper scale, as you'll see earlier, I actually had adjusted this in my Thrustmaster control panel, and the Thrustmaster control panel overwrites what you choose in the game when it comes to the wheel dampening. So this is set at 100, but it doesn't really matter for me whether it's at 100 or 0. It has absolutely no effect because I had this set at 0 in the Thrustmaster control panel. If you're running another wheel that does not have a damper scale in a control panel, you're going to want to set this to 0, not 100. Because it just adds extra weight and resistance, and there's no reason to have that extra weight and resistance. The force feedback is already very heavy on this game, and you don't want to add any more to it. And then the last thing that you'll see here is the center spring scale. I can't remember what the default value is here, but I know I did adjust it, and as you can see, I adjusted it to 25%. Any more and the wheel feels a little funny in the center, and any less the wheel feels very vague, like there's nothing happening in the center. So I found that 25 or a value of 25 is kind of the sweet spot when it comes to the center spring scale. So that's it for the settings, guys. Try these out. It should help you out a lot. But please remember that this is not a simulation racing game. It is not going to give you the exact same experience as Assetto Corsa or iRacing. I can't emphasize that enough. It's just not going to be that way. But that doesn't mean you can't have fun with it. The idea when setting your force feedback for this game is to get it where it is fun to play the game. And these settings right here, you can play with the wheel all day long and it is fun to play the game. Is it the most realistic? No, it's not. But this is the best way to keep the cars on the track, be able to control and oversteer, control understeer. You know, it's just the most controllable, the most fun way to play the game. So I hope this helps you out, guys. Give these a try. Remember to turn it back to standard steering. Do not use simulation steering. And remember to put the stability control on as well, because it's going to help your overall experience when playing this game. Trust me, I'm as die-hard as they come when it comes to not using assist in a racing game, but you absolutely have to use them here. It is a must. So thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you got some enjoyment and something useful out of this video. Remember to click that like button if you liked it. Subscribe if you are not subscribed, and I'll see you guys in the next video.